Hi, everybody. It's Next Take podcast with just me and
Sharon.
yeah. Unfortunately, Mikel can't be on this episode because he has to work today, but we're going to be having a conversation about, I think, a pretty important topic. Again, this is episode 47. So we're going to be talking about women's rights. I think it's obviously an important thing for us to discuss, especially at this time. I think, especially in the States, obviously with, women's rights definitely being taken away. We can definitely have conversations about different things. But again, we're gonna probably do like a timeline of kind of women's rights, and then maybe we can kind of stop along the way and talk about different things. Yeah, what we're gonna do. Ready to get into
That's
it?
exciting. Yes, I'm ready. Take me down memory lane.
Let's do it. So, first things first, women's rights. What exactly is it? So, women's rights are the rights and entitlements claimed for women and girls worldwide. They formed the basis for the women's rights movement in the 19th century and the feminist movements during the 20th and 21st centuries, which obviously we're still doing in terms of, feminist movements and stuff like that. So, with the timeline that we're going to be doing, we're going to be kind of doing the American kind of timeline and then the Canadian timeline. But obviously, I think what we'll kind of see is that our timeline kind of coincides a little bit with the American timeline. So it's going to be fairly similar, but there's going to be obviously some differences with ours. So we'll start with the American timeline first. So women's history is obviously full of trailblazers in the fight for equality in the United States, from Abigail Adams, which is John Adams' wife, imploring her husband to, quote, remember the ladies when envisioning a government for the American colonies, to suffragists like Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton fighting for women's right to vote, to the rise of feminism and Hillary Clinton becoming the first female nominee for president by a major political party. American women have long fought for the equal footing throughout the nation's history. And while some glass ceilings have been shattered, with certain things that obviously has happened recently, others remain, but progress continues to be made. As Clinton said while accepting her nomination, quote, when there are no ceilings, the sky's the limit. So I think that's pretty great. So let's start with the timeline. So March 31st, 1776. So a long, long time ago. In a letter to her husband, which was founding father John Adams, which again, if people are Hamilton fans, you've heard the name, future First Lady Abigail Adams makes a plea to him and the Continental Congress to, quote, remember the ladies and be more generous and favorable to them than your ancestors. Do not put such unlimited power into the hands of the husbands. Agree. Remember, all men would be tyrants if they could. If particular care and attention is not paid to the ladies, we are determined to foment a rebellion and will not hold ourselves bound by any laws in which we have no voice or representation. And I think that's kind of incredible for 1700s or 1776 that you have this woman who, of a different stance, obviously, than probably most women were in the 1770s, but you have this woman kind of being like, listen to us. Listen to what we have to say. Because if you don't, then we're just going to become your enemy. And you don't want that. Because again, women do the work, and we do the work probably a lot better than men do. Because men just don't always. I love how she says, like, men can be tyrants if allowed, which I don't think has really changed much in the coming centuries. Men are still tyrants.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
as much as they all don't want to admit it, there is a huge element of ego that's influencing their decision making. And
absolutely.
We tend to have the ability to, think more far ahead without kind of having our ego influence our decision based on like other political members or what's being said online where
yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, I mean, not to say that women don't have egos, we do, but it's like, for some reason, like, I mean, again, if we're talking about like narcissistic women, that's totally a different situation. Their egos are the most important thing to them. So, but if we're kind of looking at people who are not narcissists, we tend to just not let our egos kind of lead us. Like, even if you look at like police investigations and stuff like that, the ones that are always seem to be really difficult to solve, and I wish I can think of one thing as an example, but like I can't even think of something right now of like a particular case, but ones that have been really difficult to solve, and it's mainly men solving it. As soon as you kind of put a woman in the mix, it's like everything gets figured out. Actually, I can't think of one. There was a Netflix documentary about it, American Nightmare, I think what it was called. And it was a story of the girl who was kidnapped out of her home, and they were accusing the boyfriend of doing something. But then when they found her, they accused her of kind of doing like a Gone Girl situation because like she was trying to prove a point to her boyfriend or whatever. But it was all true. She was kidnapped. Everything she said was true. And the men weren't believing her. But then you have this one woman who had a similar case happen in their jurisdiction. And she's like, wait a minute, like this is true. And it literally took that woman to be like, you guys are idiots. She's telling the truth. And that's how they were able to figure out who kidnapped her. And it wasn't like she was the only one. There were others. So it was just like, sometimes just let the women do the work. And we'll help you. We'll guide you, men, because like you are sometimes dumb. And I love that. Anyway, next thing. July 19th or 20th, 1848, in the first Women's Rights Convention organized by women, the Seneca Falls Convention is held in New York with 300 attendees, including organizers Elizabeth Cady Stanton and I think it's Lucreta Mott, 68 women and 32 men, including Frederick Douglass, signed the Declaration of Sentiments, which sparked decades of activism, eventually leading to the passage of the 19th Amendment, granting women the right to vote. So that was in 1848, but were women allowed to vote in 1848? Like, I feel like that's like I don't know.
I think 18 something doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that was a 19 something.
Yeah, 1920, but then 1920, not every woman could vote. Only,
yeah,
I think the whites.
Yeah. Because even in Canada, like, we'll get to it, like, we were able to, I think the first person to vote in Canada, I believe, was in the 1920s. But that still didn't allow every single woman to vote until like the 60s. Mm-hmm. So it's still like, it wasn't like right away that every woman was allowed to vote. It didn't matter skin color, all of that. But yeah, so 1848 sounds like way long ago. That just doesn't make sense to me. But who knows? I guess maybe we'll find out exactly when all women were allowed to vote, which I can imagine probably all women were not allowed to vote until maybe the 70s, 60s or 70s. So, yeah. January 23rd, 1849, Elizabeth Blackwell becomes the first woman to graduate from medical school and become a doctor in the United States. She was born...
That's amazing.
I know. She was born in Bristol, England, and she graduated from Geneva College, New York, with the highest grades in her entire class. That's incredible. See, men? This is when you need to snap. May 29th, 1851, a formerly enslaved worker turned sorry, my brain's not working. Abolitionist. I know I said that wrong, but work with me here because my brain's not working, like I said. And women's rights activist Sojourner Truth, probably butchered her name and I apologize, delivers her famous anti-woman speech at the Women's Rights Convention in Akron, Ohio. And I don't know if this is the whole speech, but this is part of it. So, quote, "And ain't I a woman? Look at me. Look at my arm. I have plowed and planted and gathered into barns, and no man could head me. Ain't I a woman? I could work as much and eat as much as a man when I could get it, and bear the lash as well. And ain't I a woman? I have borne 13 children and seen most all sold off to slavery. And when I cried out with my mother's grief, none but Jesus heard me. And ain't I a woman?" I think that's... wow. Contemporaneous reports of Truth's speech did not include the slogan and quoted Truth in standard English. In later years, the slogan was further distorted to "Ain't I a woman?", reflecting the false belief that as a formerly enslaved woman, Truth would have had a more southern accent. So Truth was in fact a New Yorker, so she didn't actually have that. She was from the South or anything. So yeah, I think that was pretty moving. So December 10th, 1869, the legislature of the territory of Wyoming, so I guess Wyoming wasn't always a state, they were first a territory, passes America's first women's suffrage law, granting women the right to vote and hold office. So in 1890, Wyoming is the 44th state admitted to the Union and becomes the first state to allow women the right to vote. So come on, you Wyoming. You may be the cow poop of the states, but you did it. Anyway. Doing it better than the rest of them, but anyway. October 16th, 1916, Margaret Sanger opens the first birth control clinic in the United States. Incredible. Located in Brownsville, Brooklyn, her clinic was deemed illegal under the Comstock laws, forbidding birth control, and the clinic was raided on October 26, 1916. So just like 10 days later, when she had to close 2 additional times due to legal threats, she closed the clinic and eventually founded the American Birth Control League in 1921, the precursor to today's Planned Parenthood. I mean, I guess we can kind of get into it a little bit here. I just never understand why people think it's their business to worry about what women do with their bodies in terms of whether or not we're ready to get pregnant. We should be able to, I mean, at all, like, I grew up in a family with a mother who said the men should take charge on, preventing pregnancy, because at least, like, they don't have to pump drugs into their system. But at the same time, it's like, but we have to take charge in that as well. We can't just leave it up to men to do. So if I need to make sure that I'm not going to get pregnant if I don't want to get pregnant, what's it to you if I want to take birth control? Or if I do get pregnant, if I want to get an abortion, what's it to you? Am I hurting you? Scientifically speaking, I mean, I'm sure people might think differently, but scientifically speaking, a child isn't considered a person until they can live outside of their mother's womb, and that's not until 25 weeks. So it's like sorry, really Christian person, then if you're so, or not just Christian person, but far right-wing people, which are usually really religious people, if you have a problem with me taking charge and in my life when it comes to something like this, then how about I push this child out and you take it on? You pay for my child then. Everything. Pay for the diapers, pay for the feedings, pay for the education, pay for all of it. You do it. Like,
their argument is just so contradicting because, like, yeah, they care so much about, you know, the baby and when it's still in the womb.
Yeah, how about caring about us as a woman who has to carry that child?
Yeah, and then they don't even care about the baby once the baby's out.
Exactly.
And
no,
it's like,
they just,
you're on your own.
Oh, God's children. You know, it's all about that. It's like, I mean, I'm not saying that I'm necessarily one that's like, for other people, if that's what you need to do, go for it. Me personally, for my own personal things, I would never go through that myself. That's for my own personal reasons, is because I don't know, like, if I would ever have the chance to be able to get pregnant. Otherwise, like, if that happens, like, I'm not going to do it. It's either you're in it or you're not, whatever. But that's for me. But for everybody else, choose what's best for you. If staying pregnant and having this kid is what's best for you, great. If not, then great. Do what you have to do.
100%. There's just so many different layers to it.
Yeah.
As to why people possibly need to, you know, make the decision for themselves. And it could be medically related. It could be environmentally related. So like socially related.
Yeah. And I talked about this before, that I think like this forever stayed with me when all of this obviously was happening, and you have like Grey's Anatomy kind of taking that on. Like Shonda Rhimes has very much put that in her shows to be like, let's not forget. And there was an episode where they were taking someone into Seattle from, I don't know exactly which state it was, but one of the states obviously that, you know, got rid of, made abortions illegal. And she didn't necessarily want to have an abortion. She was married. She had other kids. She would have definitely taken on this additional kid. But medically, she couldn't. Medically, she had to have an abortion. Otherwise, she would have died. And while they're transporting her to Seattle to have her have this abortion, which it just should have been this seamless thing, they were caught in traffic. And whatever like medically was going on with her, I can't remember now, something burst. And she was bleeding. She was bleeding internally. And moral of the story is she died. So this is a very real thing. And that kind of opened your eyes to be like, oh, abortion isn't just about someone who just doesn't want to be pregnant or is using it as a form of birth control, which I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't think you should use abortion as a form of birth control in the sense of, oh, well, if I get pregnant, I'll just like have an abortion. It's easy. I don't agree with that. But what I am saying is like, if obviously medically speaking, or just you're like, oh shit, I wasn't expecting this. Now what? That's where I'm saying you should do what you need to do. And because of that, you're like, oh shoot, like it's not just about that. And what's better? Having this woman have an abortion and being there for her husband and her kids and be here alive, or saving that baby because you're on like this kick, saving that baby, but then potentially having that mother die.
Yeah.
Like, and now her children that she has now and her husband are alone.
Yeah.
What's better? You know, it never makes sense to me. Wow, old white men think they have a right to talk about women's bodies. But again, like, not even just them. We were just talking about Love is Blind before we started recording. Sarah Ann, a young woman who also has those same views. And it's just like, I wait for the day where you're going to have to figure out what you're going to do and maybe not be able to do it. We'll see. Or not. I don't really care what you do. But yeah, it's ridiculous. But anyways.
It kind of just goes back to how not uninvolved, how slow medical development is for women.
Yeah.
You know? Like, even if we get a pap smear, like, it's the same type of, like, equipment that was used so long ago is still being used today. Just because, like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it type of thing. But there's so many other advancements in any other element that's not solely focused on just women, you know? Even, like, when you get a IUD, you're telling me there's no drug you can take to resolve the pain while it's getting inserted into your vagina?
That's what I'm saying. I definitely at one point thought about IUD when I was trying to prevent pregnancy, so not so much now, but when I was then, and I didn't realize that it's a very painful process. And it's just like, I mean, I don't want to go through that. Like, I'm no.
Yeah.
I can just pop these pills, but then I also have to remember to be taking them every day. And, you know, I mean, I haven't been on birth control in like 6 years now. I had a bad reaction, but like, that's the thing. It's just like, why is it that way? Why is it painful? I don't get it.
Yeah.
Like, even like, remember, like, kind of dipping into the personal thing here, but I don't mind. I had to do a sonohystogram. It was last year. Yeah, I think it was last year. And that's kind of basically just checking to make sure everything looks good, new uterus and all that, or whatever. Make sure there's no scarring and stuff like that. And I remember being told because I've never done one before, don't know what this entails. I'm hearing you flow, like you put like saline water into your vagina, and I'm like, what the hell is happening? And I remember being told, like, yeah, you gotta take Advil, like, I think like a half an hour before doing it, so that by the time that you get there, it's kicked in, it's ready to go. And I'm just like, what the hell are you doing to me? And it's no different than doing like an ultrasound, like a transvaginal ultrasound. So I didn't understand like where the pain was coming from, but at the same time, I have heard horror stories of people being in a lot of pain during this procedure, and I'm like, really? Like, for me, it was seamless, but I'm just like, wonder why. And I guess it just depends on each person, but it's just like, why does that have to be painful? Why does different things have to be painful? Doing a pap smear, it's uncomfortable. It isn't always painful, but it's uncomfortable. And there has to be a better way. I hate doing paps, but there has to be a better way. And that's the other thing too. I'm kind of on that topic before we move on back to the timeline. Pap smears. Back in the day, like, I don't know how long you've had to do paps, but I've been doing them since I was 15. And that's about 18 years now. Yikes. And back then, you had to do them every year. Didn't matter what results came back, you had to do it in a year. And then it went to 2 years. Now it's 3 years. And for me, like my mom, for example, as well, we both have had abnormal cells. My mom worse than me, but I've had abnormal cells. And it's like, what if something happened in those 3 years that I'm told that I cannot get a pap test because OHIP won't cover it? What if something happens and you're making women have to wait 3 years to get a pap test done? Why? Do men have to, I mean, men go through different things, but like, do men have to wait 3 years to get a physical done? Why is it that women have to wait 3 years to have a physical done? I just don't understand it.
Yeah.
I don't get it. But I'll come off my soapbox. But yeah. So back to the timeline. April 2nd, 1917, Jeanette Rankin of Montana, a longtime activist with the National Women's Suffrage Association, is sworn in as the first woman elected to Congress as a member of the House of Representatives. So that's pretty cool. August 18th, 1920, ratification of the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution is completed, declaring, quote, the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. That was in 1920. It is nicknamed the, quote, Susan B. Anthony Amendment in honor of her work on behalf of women's suffrage. May 20th or 21st, 1932, Amelia Earhart becomes the first woman and second pilot ever. Charles Lindbergh was first to fly solo nonstop across the Atlantic. Yay, women flying airplanes. February 16th, 1945, the Alaska Equal Rights Act is signed into law. The act is the first state or territorial anti-discrimination law enacted in the United States in the 20th century. Elizabeth Huratovich, woman who was Grand President of the Alaska Native Sisterhood, spearheaded the effort to end discrimination against Alaska Natives and other non-white residents, which is definitely, I would imagine, something that is still being fought today. December 1st, 1955, Black seamstress Rosa Parks refuses to give up her seat to a white man on a bus in Montgomery, Alabama. The move helps launch the civil rights movement. Monk, first of all, okay, listen.
Mm-hmm.
You are a man. I'm a person who believes in chivalry, okay? You are a man asking this woman because she's Black to get up so you can sit. Bruh, stand the fuck up. Okay? Shut the fuck up and stand up.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know she was in the front of the bus and Blacks always had to be in the back of the bus, but it's just like, so deal with it. I'm going to drink from the same fountains that you do. I'm going to sit in the same seats that you do. Get over your fucking self. Anyways. May 9th, 1960. The FDA approves the first commercially produced birth control pill in the world, allowing women to control when and if they have children. Margaret Sanger initially commissioned the pill, the funding from heiress Catherine McCormick. So it wasn't until 1960 that we had the first birth control pill, which is, it feels insane to me, but I guess whatever. June 10th, 1963, President John F. Kennedy signs into law the Equal Pay Act, prohibiting sex-based wage discrimination between men and women performing the same job in the same workplace. July.
And so that came 20 years after women started working, because women started working in the 1940s.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, with the war especially,
Yeah.
women would have started working because the men weren't there to do the jobs.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. So, yeah. So basically, women are being paid less than men do the same job, which is, again, I feel like something that we're still dealing with today. But yeah, I believe that women have to live too, potentially on their own as well, and have to, cost of living is a lot. So why, should we be paid less because we're women? Like, it's ridiculous. I don't know. I don't understand people. Men. It's men. That's why. It's always men.
I think it's still very much an issue.
Yeah.
Because And then because people are still in that kind of mindset to like hide their salaries or not share their salaries, like it's so much easier for it to like fall under the radar and like be paid less than someone else. But I've noticed that it's still evidently an issue for older staff members, I find.
Yeah.
Maybe not my generation of people.
Yeah.
Because we speak about it, and like from what I've spoken to other people, like I start very similar to like my male colleagues, but anything hot, I've noticed based on my experience and hearing other people talk about their salaries or their raises, for example, maybe the raises could be different. But like people are doing the same amount of work. Yeah.
And for you, like it's different too, because you are a lawyer, which, you know, there are going to be, you know, maybe a little more balanced if you want to use the word balance. Like sometimes maybe it's not as balanced, but it's maybe a little more balanced where it's men and women. In my profession, it's usually mainly women. I mean, even like currently now, like, you know, before the changes happened with the firm, we only had 2 male clerks. Now we only got 1.
Yeah.
Right. And he's not even in my office. He's in a different office. So so it's so much different in that sense. But, and then what I was also going to say is when you're also in this world of, you know, men should be the breadwinner, you also have that part of it as well. And I think that it is definitely a factor in not equal pay. But like, even like with my raise, and I got a significant raise, which I was not expecting, but I was very happy. I now currently make more than my boyfriend. And even though like he's obviously supportive of me making what I'm making, like obviously he's proud of me on that sense, you still get that level of, well, damn, she makes more than me. You still get that a little bit of that too, because at the end of the day, you can take the African out of Africa, but you can't take the African out of the man. So I know that of him, but it's just like, you do have a little bit of that. And it's like, fellas, it's okay if your woman makes more than you. At the end of the day, like, it works for both of you. Yeah. Or like whatever, right? Or if you're single, whatever, you do what you gotta do, because like you need to make the money. And if you're not even getting paid the same amount as your male counterpart, it's like, that's bullshit. But July 2nd, 1964, President Lyndon B. Johnson. So at this point, we've lost our President JFK. So may he rest in peace. Let's move on. Signs the Civil Rights Act into law. So its title, okay, I hate Roman numerals. It's VII. Y'all figure it out. I don't know, okay? Bans employment discrimination based on race, religion, national origin, or sex. So that's great. Good for Mr. Johnson. June 30th, 1966, Betty Friedan, author of 1963's The Feminine Mystique, helps found the National Organization for Women, abbreviation is NOW, using as the organization now states, quote, grassroots activism to promote feminist ideals, lead societal change, eliminate discrimination, and achieve and protect the equal rights of all women and girls in all aspects of social, political, and economic life. June 23rd, 1972, again with the freaking Roman numerals, Title IX, again, y'all figure it out, of the Education Amendments is signed into law by President Richard Nixon. It states, quote, no person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. January 22nd, 1973, in its landmark 7-2 Roe v. Wade decision, the U.S. Supreme Court declares that the Constitution protects a woman's legal right to an abortion. However, in June 2022, the Supreme Court overturned the ruling because white men have to worry about what women do with their bodies, as we've discussed earlier in the episode. September 20th, 1973, in the Battle of the Sexes, tennis great Billie Jean King beats Bobby Riggs in straight sets during an exhibition match aired on primetime TV and drawing 90 million viewers. She said, quote, "I thought it would set us back 50 years if I didn't win that match. It would ruin the women's tennis tour and affect all women's self-esteem. Good for you." Yeah, I'm not a huge tennis fan, so I can't really comment more on that, but I mean, good for her as a woman and also as a member of the LGBTQ plus to be like, fuck this shit, I'm winning it. So good for her.
Yeah.
So July 7th, 1981, Sandra Day O'Connor is sworn in by President Ronald Reagan as the first woman to serve on the U.S. Supreme Court. She retires in 2006 after serving 24 years. June 18th, 1983, flying on the Space Shuttle Challenger, Sally Ride becomes the first American woman in space. In 1983, we already went to the moon prior to that. Like, it's just, why couldn't we figure that out before? But whatever. Happy it happened in 83. July 12th, 1984, Democratic presidential nominee Walter Mondale names U.S. Rep. Geraldine Ferrero in New York as his running mate, making her the first woman vice president nominee by a major party. March 12, 1993, nominated by President Bill Clinton, Janet Reno is sworn in as the first female Attorney General of the United States. January 23, 1997, also nominated by Clinton, Madeleine Albright is sworn in as the nation's first female Secretary of State. September 13th, 1994, Clinton's at it again. He signs the Violence Against Women Act as part of the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act, providing funding for programs that help victims of domestic violence, rape, sexual assault, stalking, and other gender-related violence. So even a man who put his DNA on a woman's dress can still do good for women, I guess. That's great. Yay. But anyway, I kind of want to talk about Bill Clinton. I think I actually do, spoiler alert, might have that as an option for, because I mean, I don't make this about Clinton by any means. He did do some good for women, but I mean, he's very problematic as well when it comes to his choices with women and potentially underage girls. We don't know that for sure because it's never been fully out released that he may have been involved with, you know, someone who may or may not have killed himself in prison. But anyways, he's also very problematic, but I guess at least in the 90s he did some good for women. So there's that. Let's move to the aughts. January 4th, 2007, U.S. Rep. Nancy Pelosi becomes the first female Speaker of the House. In 2019, she reclaims that title, becoming the first lawmaker to hold the office 2 times in more than 50 years. January 24th, 2013, the U.S. military removes a ban against women serving in combat positions. What? Why did that only happen, let's be real, just 11 years ago? That's crazy. July 26, 2016, Hillary Clinton becomes the first woman to receive a presidential nomination from a major political party. During her speech at the Democratic National Convention, she says, quote, "Standing here as my mother's daughter, as my daughter's mother, I'm so happy this day has come." And it's unfortunate she didn't win. Yeah. But anyway, we're going to talk about how history is potentially repeating itself. I'm really terrified, but let's get to that. January 20th, 2021, Kamala Harris is sworn in as the first woman and first woman of color vice president of the United States. She said, quote, "While I may be the first woman in this office, I will not be the last." Yes, Harris said after getting elected in November. And just to make this make sense to everybody, because I know Donald Trump had been spewing his stupidity, I love it how he questions Black people's heritage. Don't see you doing that to white people. But just to make this clear, she is the daughter of Jamaican and Indian immigrants. Okay. Harris served as California's first Black female attorney general in one election to the U.S. Senate in 2016. She made her own unsuccessful presidential bid before being selected by former Vice President Joe Biden as his running mate. So I know he's out here kind of being like, "Oh, you said you're Black, but you're Indian. You're not Black." Yes, she is, motherfucker. It takes one drop, okay? One drop. So I know it might sound very confusing, but as a Jamaican herself who had family who, like my great grandma was also partially Indian as well, it's what we refer to as coolie. And if you need to do your research, you Google it. I'm sure it's out there. Maybe we should have talked about it on our Jamaica independence episode. We didn't, but it's coolie, and it's a mixture of Black and Indian, and that's what we refer to ourselves as. I would be considered coolie as well. Kamala Harris would also be considered that as well. So it doesn't mean she's not Black, though. We are Black. And again, at the end of the day, really and truly, what does it matter? He did the same thing to Obama.
Yeah.
And it's ridiculous. I hate you, you Oompa Loompa. Like I said, like, we won't get into it, but I am very terrified for the state of what's going to happen in the election. And that worries me as Canadian as well. We're worried over here as well. So anyway, let's get out of Oompa Loompas nonsense and let's go back to the timeline. And now we're in Canada, where we feel a little safer. We don't have to worry about how things are going to turn out in the election. So we're going as far back as 1645, before Canada was even really Canada. So Jeannie Mance was the founder of Canada's first hospital. So Jeannie Mance, she was a French nurse and settler of New France, opened Hotel Dieu in Montreal, which was one of the first hospitals in Canada. Go on with your bad self. Then let's just fast forward to 1813 and talk about Laura Secours, who is the Canadian heroine of the War of 1812. So Laura Secours walked 32 kilometers to warn Lieutenant James Fitzgibbon of impending danger of attack by the Americans during the War of 1812. I mean, honestly, I talked about it before. America should have stayed themselves quiet. You just got out of a war, and you want to come attack us? What do we do to you? Like, leave us alone. Anyway, 1853, Mary Ann Shadd Cary. She was the first Black newspaper woman in North America. So she became the first Black newspaper woman in North America, editing the Provincial Freeman, a Toronto-based newspaper that gave a voice to Black people in Canada. In 1867, Dr. Emily Stowe, who I'm not sure if she's also, I think she might be a person of color as well, became the first Canadian woman physician to practice in Canada, although she was not licensed until 1880. Whatever. As long as she was doing good, like, I don't really care. 1875, Grace Annie Lockhart, pioneer of women's university education. Grace Annie Lockhart received a bachelor's degree in science and English literature from Mount Allison University in Sackville, New Brunswick. It was the first degree awarded to a woman in Canada. 1897, Sharon, this is one's for you. Clara Brett Martin was Canada's first woman lawyer. So, Clara Brett Martin was admitted to the bar as Canada's first woman lawyer. That is awesome.
And on that topic, actually, I recently went to walk around. I just stumbled upon Osgoode Law School recently, and my friend and I were literally going through their graduation pictures, and it took us like, that school's old. Like, it was starting in the 18, I think. I don't even know, maybe earlier. Like, I can't remember anymore. But it took us like maybe 2 full rows to finally find a female student of that school. And it took us like the fact that it literally felt like we're playing Where's Waldo.
Wow.
On how long it took us to find. And like, it went from like 1, and then like for a few years there was none. And then it was like, and then we finally found like a sprinkle of some more. But I wish I could remember the year, but it was so long. And it took us about like maybe 7 rows further to find any person of color. Where like we almost gave, it was in the, I think that at that point it was in the 70s. And like we were starting in like the 16s. Like, it was wild. Okay, not 16, I'm being dramatic. But like, it took forever to get to where they are now. Yeah, so yeah, I believe that.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. 1903, Emma Baker was the first woman to receive a PhD from a Canadian university. So yeah, Emma Baker became the first woman to receive a PhD from a Canadian university. She earned the degree in psychology at the University of Toronto. 1914 to 1918, the first female officer served with the Canadian Army Medical Corps. Okay, so that is also not surprising. So during the First World War, more than 2,800 women served the Canadian Army Medical Corps. I keep saying corpse, and it sounds like I'm saying corpse, but I mean corpse. Okay, with the majority serving overseas in hospitals, on board hospital ships, in several theaters of war, and in combat zones with field ambulance units. In 1916, women in Manitoba became the first in Canada to win the right to vote. So that was in 1916, and merely in Manitoba. But Manitoba women were the first in Canada to gain the right to vote in provincial elections, thanks to the efforts of Nellie McClunk and the Political Equality League. 1921, Angus MacPhail, first woman elected to the House of Commons. She was an activist and founder of the Elizabeth Fry Society of Canada, and she became the first woman.
Sorry, when you said that, it triggered something because I did a placement as a social worker there.
1924, Cecile Eustace Smith was the first Canadian woman to represent Canada in an Olympic Games. Seems fitting.
Yeah, very fitting.
Yeah. She was a 15-year-old figure skater, and she became the first Canadian woman to represent Canada in the Olympic Games. She competed in the first official Winter Olympics in Chamonix, whatever, in France.
Oh, now,
very fitting.
Also in France, and women are, breaking or making history.
Exactly.
Breaking world records.
Listen to this one. 1929, women were declared as persons. But that's where we were before.
Literally, I don't even know. Just things.
Just things. Yeah, basically. Because I think men sometimes just views us as things anyway. So there you go.
Maybe we need to remind men in this day and age. We are persons.
We are persons. 1960, all Canadian women were given the right to vote. So there you go. That was in 1960. All women in Canada were granted the right to vote in federal elections until the Canada Elections Act was enacted in 1960. First Nations women could not vote unless they had lost or given up their treaty rights and Indian status. What the hell? That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It seems absolutely messed up. 1969, I'm going to butcher her name. Rajani Lambarge Kovas was the first woman appointed as a judge to a superior court. So that's really cool. 1977, the Canadian Human Rights Act was created. And obviously with that, the Canadian Human Rights Act was passed, forbidding discrimination on the basis of sex and ensuring equal pay for work of equal value for women. 1981, women's rights were enshrined in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which we have talked about in a previous episode before as well. I think it was our Trudeau episode, because Pierre Trudeau was the person who kind of brought that forward. So we did talk about that in that episode. 1983, Jean Suave, because it has an accent on the E, first woman to serve as Governor General of Canada. 1992, Dr. Roberta Bondar, first Canadian woman astronaut sent into space. That was in 1992. We did worse than America did. So there you go. And she was a neurologist. So that's really cool. 1993, Jean Augustine, first Black Canadian woman elected to the House of Commons. 1993, Kim Campbell, first woman Prime Minister of Canada. Y'all, if you remember, me and Mikel talked about, a woman has never been Prime Minister before. Like, we're doing so bad. We were wrong. We were so wrong. So that's really good to see. 2015, first gender balanced cabinet in Canadian history was announced. So that's really good. 2015, National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls was also launched. So the same year. And that's basically it. So we actually managed to finish this.
And that
with time
was a long I know. And that last one is like
a long time coming.
Yeah. And like, we're still not doing a good job in terms of like, handling. See, that's the one thing. Like, as much as, we want to praise Canada in our evolvement versus America, we're still doing we're just hiding. We're just good at hiding, the deep underlying dark secrets, and they mainly revolve around the way just we treat Indigenous people.
Agreed.
Yeah.
But I know you gotta go. So again, thank you, Sharon, for coming on the pod and talking about this with me. Again,
I enjoyed going down memory lane.
Yeah, me too. It was good.
Yeah.
If you guys want to hear more from Sharon, we do have another episode with her on. We did the Women's History Month episode, which was back in March. So I'll put a link to the episode and I'll put it there. And if you guys want to hear even more, you can head over to my podcast, Reality Tea Times 2, where she has been, I think we've done 2 seasons of Love is Blind together. And I'm trying to get her to do UK with me, but we'll see what she ends up doing. But you can definitely hear more from her on the shenanigans that is Love is Blind as well. But that's it. Thank you again. And this ends episode 47 of the Next Day podcast. Again, the Next Day podcast you can get on any of your favorite podcast apps. We do have our website, which is solo.to / Next Take Podcast. We're also on all the social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram at Next Take Podcast, and Twitter and TikTok at Next Take Pod. We also have our email where you can contact us, and that is at mikeltanika@gmail.com. And again, thank you to Sharon. We did have to do the outro with just me, but for coming on to the episode with me to discuss women's rights. And pretty much the evolution of women's rights. But that is it for this episode. Again, Mikel will be back again next week, so not to worry. But that is it for episode 47.